right, everybody. So this will be a quick little intro. So I do have one big announcement. Thanks for one. Two, to be combining mobile apps. So starting in August, the third Tuesday of every month. So this day will be both. So what I will end up doing is I will open it up to where we'll have one iOS speaker and one Android speaker. So that way I can appease both audiences as well. That way, you know, you're not an Android guy and you're coming for the whole entire meetup. So it's going to be a trial. I'm definitely open to suggestions on all of this as well. So I'm going to start next month. And I get the first Tuesday anymore.
There's always CSS.
Nope. CSS will still the 5th Tuesday of every month. That happens. So September.
Would you say
we're going to leave that be there. The big announcement in all of this. And what Code for Orlando?
Yeah, that sounds right. It's like
the first Tuesday. Yeah. Like August 7th or whatever. Don't ask me why it's in my head, but it is.
Code for Orlando, or at least join the GitHub project.
Yep.
Add your resume.
Yep.
It's fun stuff.
All right. So that being said, Mr. John to start his intro to Android. Woohoo!
Yay! Hey everyone, my name is John. I do mobile app development at Unikey. And today I'll be talking about how to build an Android while we're building. Hopefully the end result will be hit play. Get the simulator up. So what I'm using is Android on the left. It's a text file explorer, and it builds all the code for you. On the right, I'm using Genemoji, which is a tool to create Android device emulators. This is the Samsung Galaxy S3 device, and this is hopefully what we can build at the end of it. A Twitter timeline, and I think you can actually press that button. Yes, I can. Cool. All right. So let's start with make a new project. Application, Twitter. So elements in here. Do blank activity. So I'm going to explain activity. Android apps are made up of many activities, generally a singular action or a collection of actions a user, and it's a container for UI. Go into that later. Main activity, nope. Let's go with main activity. Okay. Did it create it yet? There we go. Wait for this to build everything. So who here has built an Android app or even done a Hello World? A few of you guys. Cool, cool. Hopefully I can expand upon that. So we have a activity main XML, and this the Android the UI. Let's get a preview. Here we go. Do a different level. All right, so this is what our current app will look like. And let's find the actual code itself. And this is the starting point of our application. It's called main activity. So activities have life cycles, right? When it's created, when it's destroyed, if you go in the background, it's paused, you come back into the app, it resumes. And what I would want to start with is adding Twitter login to this app. So Twitter login is an action that I want to make an activity for. So login activity, boop, extends activity. So login activity is an activity. Okay, does not know what activity is because I did not import. I don't know the shortcut on Mac.
Oh,
Command enter.
no, just kidding.
Option enter? Okay.
Just hit all the keys at once.
Okay, so it couldn't find the activity class, so I had to import it from the Android libraries. All right, and let me double check the signature of the. So I'm going to copy this function on create. Essentially, that's when the activity is created, and that's where I want to start my code. Let's see. Activity. I made an activity for this. I want to create a view next before I dive into the code. To create UI, you go into resources or res, layout, and you create a. Let me go a little slower. New layout resource file. So this file is it's formatted in XML, and it essentially defines how the UI is going to look like, whether it's going to contain buttons, text, the size of it, the color, the position, whatever. So I'm going to call this login activity. Let's see, maybe I want relative layout. So let's see, relative layout. So relative layout is a container that kind of defines how elements or UI elements inside of it behaves. An alternative to relative layout is layout, which I can either define as horizontal or vertical, and it'll automatically space elements horizontally or vertically in the order that they're created. But we're going to go with relative. So most apps, when you build a Twitter app, you generally see the login screen first. And let's go create a text or a title view. So to create a title view, I make a text view. How big do I want this text view? Wrap content, how high, wherever the size it is. I also got assigned a text to it. Android text equals, what do I want to name it? The name of the application, let's call it Matt Twitter. And so I'd want to define a font size. Is size a thing? Text size, perfect. Let's go with 18. It gives me a few options. DP, so I went with DP because DP stands for density independent pixel, which essentially means it's going to be the same size. It's going to be the same size regardless of. It's going to remain the same, independent of how many pixels per inch is on the phone. So larger phones might have. Well, let's say the iPhones, right? They have a lot of pixels per inch, so it's higher quality. Some phones have less, and things may appear larger on their phones. But specifying the size and appending DP to it, makes it the same size. Devices. Okay, so I specified the size, the text, and the, yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's see how this, Matt Twitter. That's not the location where I want it to be. Also, it's kind of tiny. So let's bump this up to 32.
Can you zoom in general?
Uh,
Hold control.
say what?
Hold control. So scroll up, it'll zoom the whole screen. Nope. Control, not command.
Control.
You shouldn't listen to this guy.
No, let me try command then.
It works on mine. I don't know. You broke your Mac.
I guess my Mac is broken. Let's see if there's a better way of, let's see if I can do a presentation mode. Do you know where I can do that?
Yeah, it's under view all the way down. Presentation mode.
Presentation mode. All right, let's do this.
But if you don't have bookmarks,
All right, perfect. This is not the project I want presentation mode in. This is the one. All right, here we go. All right, presentation mode. Okay, cool. So it could be a little bit bigger. Let's see. 54. Let's go with that. Okay, great. But the position looks a little bit weird, a little bit off. Let's put it in the center of the screen. So how I would do that is Android align. Did you use gravity or layout?
What?
To
With wrap content, you'd use layout.
line center vertical. Yes. I think it's yes. Is it 1 or yes?
True, close.
Right? Think about iOS. Layout align horizontal. Layout center horizontal. True. So this will put it in the center of the screen. Perfect, I guess. We can fix that later. All right, so next thing we want to do is create a button to log in. How big should I want the button to be? Let's say 60 pixels. Let's go with, no, 60 seems kind of small. Let's go with 60. 100 pixels long and 60 high. Let's say the text is login to Twitter. Okay, perfect. And this will probably be on the very top left. We don't want it there. So let's align it to the very bottom. Android layout. Align bottom, true. Let's see how that looks. That did not do what I wanted to do.
It's align the parent bottom.
Line parent bottom. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Now we want to center it horizontally. Android. Center, horizontal, true. And that looks pretty okay. Maybe we can make this longer. 160 pixels. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so we want this to do something, right? We create the UI, and now we want to do something. I'm not used to presentation mode. Let me get out of presentation mode real quick. So, let's see. Login activity, right? So we have this view, and we have this. To set that view to this activity, you say set content view, view, and then you give it an ID. So resources.id, resource.layout.login activity. So this essentially looks at our layout and login activity. So now this activity has that view. So along with that, we want to something, right? So first we have to get the button. Button login equals button find view by ID. So here's where we generally do the same thing and pass in an ID for the button. But unfortunately, I forgot to give that button an ID. So let's do that now. ID equals @+ID slash login button. OK, perfect. Saves. OK. So I can find that button by saying r resources.id.login button. Let's see now. We want to thing, so we want to set a listener on the on client. And to do that, we do new on-click listener, and then it gives us this. It'll generate this code where we can log into Twitter, and that's where that code would go into. So generally, when you work with different services, they let you, or you'll have to import their libraries into your project. And Twitter's current way of doing that is using something they call Fabric. So I downloaded this plugin. Oh man, update. Let me real quick. What do I want to do? Log in with Twitter. Yes, let's do that. All right. So Twitter has a bunch of dependencies. They depend on other code. And to do that, tutorial and add that to our project. Caitlin, how much time do I have? Generally, how long are these talks?
20-ish minutes.
Oh, I went over.
Very good.
We start.
The whole time's only been 17 minutes.
17 minutes. All right. Super slow. Okay, so I'm not gonna continue down like this. I'm just gonna show you the code of the completed code to kind of show you different stuff, or how to build everything out. Imagine I imported the Twitter library, right? All that's been set up, and they have a really nice tutorial to set it up that you can follow through the website. Let me get out of presentation mode. Wait, it's not presentation mode. So back to our login activity, right? Ooh, that's a lot of code. OK, so we have a login button. We found the login button. Set callback. So this login button is actually a custom button made by Twitter that I'm using. It has a callback. It automatically handles when you press it. It'll either open the Twitter app or web. You log in. Then after it verifies with their servers, it goes back into the app. So this point, let me go into presentation mode. This is the point where you do what you want to do when. This is the point where you're successfully logged in. And so what happens when you log into Twitter, right? You want to get to the content. And for us, that's the timeline. What I do is from here on out, I go into the next activity, the main activity. And for this app, the main activity is being able to view the timeline. And going back to what I was saying, activities are essentially single actions, or represents actions that the user can do. And for the main activity, it's viewing timelines. And the way you go to a new activity, you start an intent. I reference the main activity, and I start the activity. And I finish the login activity. So the login activity is done. There's really nothing left. And that cleans it up. So yeah, so this part handles the login of Twitter and going into the next screen. So how do we actually display the timeline, right? That's what the main activity is all about. So let's start with the view and how I made it. Layout, activity, main. Okay, ignore warnings. Still doesn't show me. I guess we don't get a preview. Well, let's see if I can explain without it. So this is, so all we really care about right here is the fact that I have a list view. So list views are a view that you can add different elements to, and it stacks them in a list. And that's essentially what the tweets are going to be. They're going to be inside this list view. And in the main activity, I find the list view here by its ID. It's super tiny. So I find the list view here. So now I have a reference to it. And so that's the UI part. Now what about the data, right? Twitter's going to handle grabbing the data. I just need to code that. So that is, and that's what's happening in the next line, get home timeline. So if we go to the actual function itself, Twitter has a class called user timeline, where you pass in a screen name, and you hit and you call build, and it'll automatically generate that data for you. Super convenient, right? Pass in any username, it'll generate the first 20 tweets for you. So now that we have this timeline, this data, we want to connect it to the view. That's where this comes in. Twitter timeline list adapter. So we have a list view and we have data, right? This adapter is the connection between the two. So I create a timeline list adapter. I pass in this. This is the activity, so the current screen that I'm on. And I pass in the user timeline, which is the data. So I have an adapter with the data. What I do is, with the list view, the UI, I set the adapter. And what that does is that finishes the binding. It's full circle in the sense that the UI is now connected to the data thanks to the adapter. And that automatically handles adding new tweets or moving tweets. It'll automatically handle the view for that, or the removal and insertion of new data and having it pop up in the view. And that is pretty much it. Time. Let's see. I should be able to find it. Is it this one?
You're right on it, man. Material Twitter.
Material Twitter, all right. So let's do a fresh install first, because I'm pretty sure it saved my Twitter login. So I hit run right here, and it is currently building. You can see the message down here.
While it's building, I imagine there's some way to register some kind of like service class or like something that's outside of just your activity.
That's
how might that look, or
so
I build those components?
I would create another class that essentially references the Twitter library and gets the timeline. So you have this class that grabs the data. You would have the activity call that class, and then that's how you transfer the data from that class to the activity.
Okay, so you don't have to do everything just in the activity.
No,
Okay.
no.
That got scary for a minute.
Hello world. Did I build the wrong one? I feel like I built app. One moment. Yes, this is the one that we were building previously. Where is the one that is already completed? Nope. File, open, wait a second. Here we are. Built the wrong project, guys. Sorry about that. So I'll take questions now, though, if you have any questions about any of this.
Really stupid question. What's the override?
Override.
Really is.
So it's part of,
It's
what was
like
it?
decorating.
Yeah, so it kind of deals with inheritance and polymorphism. Really, the app compat or its base class, or somewhere up the chain, they declared the onCreate function, and if you want to extend it, an existing function that your parent somewhere up the chain has already, you would say at override. You call the base implementation, and then you write the stuff that you want to add on to it.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yep.
I would also note that at override actually replaces the parent method. So depending on the context of the method, like if you had a class called A and a class called B extends A, if you had A typecasted as A, it would call that implementation's method, not B's. But the override makes it so when you call A's method, it calls B.
Call super doesn't like fully replace it, right?
Well,
It
super
still
is
goes-
telling it to call the base method.
the original one.
Right.
Okay.
But without calling super, it wouldn't call the base one, and override does the replacement. So
Yeah, a little bit on inheritance. And so this is the Twitter button. It'll automatically, let's see, it'll automatically open the Twitter app if you have it to log in, or it'll open the web browser if you don't have it. And this emulator does not have, all right, I'm not gonna show you my password. Okay, so, man, all right, well this talk is over. But hope you learned something.
David's account?
Say what? Say what?
Can you log in with David's account?
I don't know.
The password.
Say what?
I'll use my hand.
No worries. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Question? Can you say that again? The adapter. So imagine you have data, right? And you have different ways of displaying data. You would generally adapter for all the different ways you want to display the data differently. It's separating the code of containing the data and how to display it, bringing that into different pieces so you can reuse it easier. Ian, do you want to try to explain that better?
That's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you go back to the one of the XML files?
Yes. Let me go to presentation mode.
Or that
Command V.
on the activity main, or layout activity main,
Oh, I know what you mean.
and your set content view.
So
Yeah, there you go.
this looks all like
Wait.
coming from a web background. This looks a lot like inline styles. So if I had like a common button and I wanted that button to look the same everywhere, would I have to just copy and paste the button everywhere? Like, are there shared like XML files where I can have like a button that's included?
Can we put CSS in this?
So there's that feature in Android. You can assign styles to a class like button, or where essentially I would define it in XML, right? Let's see if there's an existing style. App theme. So here's a style for a theme, right? It has different properties about the color or whether it has a toolbar or action bar up top. So when I actually theme, I can assign this style to it and automatically apply these properties to it.
Okay. Do they use the same properties as the other XML components?
Yeah,
Do you
generally.
define, like font size and color and stuff?
Yeah, generally they're pretty good about naming it the same, functioning the same. So yeah, any other Android questions?
Austin wants to know why you don't use the dark theme.
The dark theme?
Yeah.
Oh, because this is a Twitter app. It should be Twitter. I don't know what the dark theme.
IDE.
Oh, for the IDE.
Yeah, apparently he doesn't like the light version.
Oh,
Can you switch it right now?
no. No, guys, no. All right, well, thank you for having me.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it required to use Fabric framework?
For Twitter, so that's the easiest way.
Did you try logging programmatically?
You can probably, so you can probably do that using their web API, right? You can talk to their servers directly. That requires a lot more code, right? For something as simple as logging in, you don't really need to program that because there's generally one way to log in, and that's generally like pushing a button or something. And having Twitter handle that, really convenient. But yes, you can probably log in by manually talking to their servers through their API.
Well, Twitter's an OAuth provider, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so any
Yes.
What was the extension you said? What was it called?
For Twitter, it's called Fabric. I had to download a plugin that's for Android Studio. But let's see if I can back. Nope, whatever. I have a fabric.io. This is it. So you make an account, they approve it. Usually takes them a day, and that's pretty much it. Yes.
I only saw a onCreate function.
Yes.
I know that there's onPause and all the other ones. So if you don't declare them, they just have a default value to them.
Yeah, they essentially don't do anything. They do their default, but beyond that, they don't do anything.
The front end of this application, what does it look like?
The front end. You talking about the code or how it looks?
I think you missed you at the very beginning.
Oh. Yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna log this app and actually run it. I don't know my password. You know what, I'm just gonna do this for. Jeez, problem solving. All right, so let me just log in real quick. Is that my password? That is my password. Okay. Here we go. So this essentially, let's wait a moment. And like to achieve this, you grab the Twitter library, you put a list view in your activity, and then you set the adapter to the list view.
What happens when you push the button?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
This opens a web browser, lets you tweet something. So if you have the Twitter app installed, which this emulator does not,
Is that a web view?
this is a web view right now, yes. But yeah.
And so the Fabric plugin basically allows you to easily build that functionality in without having to sort of hard code in all the other, basically the login and the flipping to the other stuff.
So Fabric's responsibility is actually that code that does that into your project.
Okay.
So you don't have to download it manually or look for it. You just download the plugin and automatically set you up.
Did you put this in the footer?
Can you say that again?
The code
For what, this thing? That's part of the Genymotion tool or program. This essentially represents the system configuration or different settings that I can do.
Yeah, it's part of the emulator.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Alrighty. So go ahead and raise your hand really quickly if you didn't get a ticket. I'm sorry. I can't look at my dog with a straight face right now. Aw, McLean.
Can I get free things?
So everybody who didn't get a ticket, please raise your hand. All right, I'll give it to you. Ian, get your butt up here and get set up. No. Oh, and I really apologize for my dog being a pervert following you into the bathroom.
That's why she was like dying over there.
That's why. I can't help but laugh. Like, I'm really sorry for my dog being a pervert following Get one now. Oh, shit. Alright, who wants to take one?
Yeah. Or all those $15, $20 t-shirts.
Yeah, we don't have them anymore.
Nope.
Sunglasses. Or all the sunglasses. You did too?
No, you don't need to.
All right.
Oh, that's a pretty dog.
Nope, not boring stuff yet. There we go. Ruining my own talk. That's awesome. So conquering the realm. Everybody's used a database before in some form or fashion. You've typed into a form field that went to a database. You've used one directly, something like that. So that's what this is about. Using databases on mobile is pretty hard. There's a lot of pros and cons. So the idea is to try to talk through a little bit of the pros and cons and hopefully point you in the direction of Realm. Maybe not for everything, but at least a lot of what you're doing will make your life easier. So conquering mobile databases. So who am I? I'm employed. Long story. I don't want to say where. I got yelled at last month. So Android developer since 1.6 and Code for Orlando. If you don't know me, I'd love to get you involved. It's a great way to help people and do cool stuff. So. All right, and before I get started, everybody knows about Sharknado? Not all at once, come on. Sharknado, everybody's like, yeah, Sharknado, you're pumped about it, right? No? All right, well, I'm pumped about Sharknado. It's tomorrow, 9, so be home. It was filmed here. It's awesome. They're going to destroy Orlando. So basic database features. When you want to store anything, like in a text file, in a Word document, Excel, anything somewhere, like this presentation, to have some kind of storage format, and you're expecting some certain interface to the storage format so that you can put your data in and get it back in the way that you want it. Now, with mobile apps and a lot of programming in general, what you expect from a database is a little bit different than what a user would expect from. You don't want something like Excel, you want something like MySQL or Redis or whatever else that you're accustomed to using. And on mobile, that's been a little bit of a hard part. Android's always had SQLite, and that's kind of arduous, but we'll get into that. So databases, what you would expect to have in them are a few key things. So the first one, documents or a hybrid of the two. And so the idea here is that when you expect to do it in a structured way that is kind of cognizant of you're going to be pulling it back out. So you need to put it in a way that is going to be usable later when you need it. And so tables, documents for NoSQL, or a combination of both is a pretty common approach to the problem. Indexing. So when you put something in, you need to know how to get it back. So you put in John into your database. You would expect to be able to type in John, and you can get him back out of the database. And that is a way that indexing accelerates that. So if you know what fields that you're going to be searching on, indexing is a way to accelerate that search. And so you would expect pretty much any database meant to hold any reasonable amount of data to have indexing of some sort. Flexibility. Nobody wants something that says this is the only way you can do it and it works for this situation, because you're probably not doing that one particular situation. So flexibility in a database is really important. And you see a lot of common patterns, SQL probably being the most widely known pattern of access. Everybody has their own take on what SQL means, but at the end of the day, you can usually read some SQL for one database and kind of understand it, even if you don't know that database specifically. So these interface languages are really important because they convey purpose in your code. And if code is worthless code, right? So the interface is really, really important. And integrity. Integrity is important for, if you save data, you'd expect that it did actually get saved. And in the case of bad things happening, like the user dropped their phone and it turned off because the battery popped out, or your app randomly closed, you expect when the user comes back, opens up the app still works, right? Like if it's now stuck in this like crash state because the application crashed once and ruined the database, like that's not any good. And a lot of that comes down to thread safety. So the idea that you to a database from multiple threads or even multiple applications and processes, that's a really important feature of a database to have. So it's something to think about when you're trying to validate what a good database is. So we can all agree that fast is good. Everybody likes fast. Nobody wants to wait 5 minutes. So there's a few different ways to rate what does fast mean. And in terms of database, there's cold start. So the user turned on their phone, they open your app for the first time, wants to be like, all right, well, hold on for 20 minutes. We got to configure some stuff and do some things, reticulate splines, as the Sims would call it. So cold start is really, really important. You want things to be quick, like loaded, fast. Read, write, so that's putting data in, back, and how you're going to get the data back. Memory. If you use up all the memory on your database, you don't have any memory to do anything else cool with it. So memory should be as light as possible. Lazy loading is a great way to do that. Does anybody know what lazy loading is? No? Somebody? Nobody knows? Okay, so David's got his mouth full, otherwise he'd answer. He's trying to answer telepathically. But so the idea with lazy loading is that I say, find me all the people in the database that their age is less than 20. So if my database had 1 million people in it, I probably don't want to back right now. That's going to be way too much data. What I really want is I want the database to remember, hey, I want this group of people, and when I'm ready, I want you to give me those people. But not all of them at once. I want to get them like in order probably. And that's a really complicated problem because the rest of your application probably also needs to be inserting things, reading things. You're probably not only doing that one query while nothing else is going on. So memory is really, really important in that regard to make these like conscious decisions to let the application choose when to compromise CPU or when to compromise memory. Asynchronous. So this memory. Everybody wants the database to be fast, and asynchronous is going to be really, really important with all those combined. So threading is hard, and when you're using your database, you're bound by the constraints of the database itself. So if your database were to require only synchronous access, well then you might as well not even use it because you're going to have to write a whole bunch of code on the database to handle all with it. When it comes to doing the query, when it comes to doing the read, the write, you're going to have to recreate the whole wheel just to be able to use it because your application is probably not multi-threaded if it's doing anything of importance. So asynchronous, that's going to be really, really important to you. And this is Java specific, but you can correlate this to other languages. Mapping to POJO, and POJO stands for plain old Java object. So the idea is that you have your classes, have some data in them, and you don't want to have to deal with the work of like, okay, I want this string and this integer and this double. I want those to save, and when I pull them back into this class and I have to instantiate that class, nobody wants to go through all of these steps of doing serialization. So direct mapping is great because you can be like, hey, I need this data, and I know it's this type, so if you can just give me that back, that would be great. And the direct mapping will do that for you, kind of like JSON. You have JSON and it just makes an object for you. So data linking. So data linking, we can think of this, I think I've got an example. So everybody can agree that manufacturers make products and then people buy the products, right? So in a database, you'd probably have manufacturers, you'd have products that are linked to the manufacturers, and you'd have owners that are linked to individual products. Now, they're not all joined together per se, but there are some joins in there. Like, there's going to be some owners that own products from a manufacturer. So when you go to look in the database, it's going to be really important that you are able to make these assertions like, oh, hey, these are all the people that own the products. And then you can infer that those people bought this manufacturer's goods, right? It's an important relationship to have inside. So data linking is a great way to provide that kind of interface. And then lastly, sorting. Kind of goes without saying, but there are databases that don't provide this. That's going to be an important feature probably for most applications. So the boring stuff this is what we kind of have in Android. We've got SQLite that I mentioned before. We've got shared preferences, which are good for a couple of strings. Some people use it for driving their whole application, which is insane. Don't do that. And serialization to flat files, depending on your data, that might be acceptable. Couchbase mobile, this is moving away from SQL, and Couchbase is all document structured, which is no SQL. And then you have Firebase, which is I'm not really a very strange database. So we got one Firebase fan. All right, you won't like the next slide, but Sugar ORM, that's going back towards an SQL style, and Realm is also like Sugar. And I know I'm forgetting some, or I don't know about some. There's a lot, but hopefully you can use this to make your own decisions on databases going forward, or better or worse for certain tasks. So SQLite, remember we talked about all of these different categories of what makes a good database. So SQLite can be very fast. And how much data you have, it is arguably very, very fast. And there's a lot of things that you can actually do, typically unknowingly, that make it very, very slow. So it's kind of both. And it is unfortunate because it requires a lot of user knowledge to know how not to make those mistakes, which is kind of a chicken and the egg, right? You can't learn how to use something and know how to use it properly at the same time. Like, that's not going to happen. So light on memory, asynchronous. And I don't have it on here, but I think it would be important to point out that SQLite does work, and it's arguably the most tested database on Android at least, and I believe iOS as well. So it is a good database option, but it is arduous to use. You're going to write a lot of code, at least on Android, and you're going to serialization because there's no POJOs. And of course the data linking, which really sucks. It doesn't have foreign key restraints. So serialization and externalization, you really don't want to be doing this unless you really have a great reason to be doing it. For storing a whole bunch of isn't going to work very well. It's going to be very easy to break when they have problems like the phone loses the battery. You're going to have exceptions on the parsing of files, which is basically going to be data loss. So you work around those kinds of issues. And so really, with serialization and externalization, you're going to be reinventing the wheel, and it's going to be difficult. And it could be fast, but probably mostly difficult. Couchbase mobile. This is a bad one for me. I really don't like Couchbase mobile. I wasted probably a week of my life on this. And I know it works for some people, but I wasn't a fan at all, so I'm just going to leave it at that one. Firebase. Firebase looks interesting, and I'll give a shout out to the guy in the back, but Firebase was probably the most capable if you need to support this one down here. If multiple device persistence is important. So I'm on my tablet, and I'm playing a game, and I do some stuff, I push the buttons, and my score changes, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to the store now, so I get on my phone, and I'm driving and playing the game because that's so, you know, you get this persistence. The user's going to like that. That solves a really complex problem for you. That's not, you know, they spend a lot of time and money on that. So, and everything else that it does it does seem to do pretty well, except for the POJO mapping. It was really sad to see that it didn't have that. And from what I can tell, it doesn't have data linking. I tried to read through the documentation. I couldn't find anything that says that it does. And that's also pretty unfortunate, which means you have to build that out yourself. So Sugar ORM, I'm pretty sure that this actually just uses SQLite. It just does all the hard work for you. So that makes this pretty like a pretty good option for you. You can do the POJO mapping, which is really, really convenient in it. From the benchmarks I was seeing, it's very, very fast. And the only major issue is the device persistence, which you can kind of get through of the actual SQLite file. So since everything is in one file, it's available to you, you could copy it, and it should work transferring it between devices, but that might not be feasible if you have a lot of data. So finally, Realm. Like Sugar ORM, it has a lot of the same features. From an API standpoint, pretty similar, and the only real difference is how it was implemented. So with Realm, it's several times faster than SQLite because they got rid of a lot of the overhead inside of SQLite with doing like query processing. They use a much more efficient way of doing that where the code maps directly to the commands that you want to perform instead of trying to understand queries for what you need. That also helps you with things like, you know, Johnny tables from XKCD where you put in -- delete and then you lose the whole database, like things like that. Realm abstracts all of that, so it's inherently safe to use. It's quite fast, and it uses the lazy loading like I was talking about before, and I believe Sugar ORM does as well. So the fun stuff, actually using Realm, because that's what I actually wanted to talk about. So you have an object, you have your user, you got a name and a location for the user. You probably have some other data, so I'll leave that up to you. And you have Realm. So Realm, for every thread that you have, you need your own Realm instance for that thread. And what I've found developing is always just keep short-lived Realm instances unless you know you're going to be doing like a big batch of work. So you would get a Realm instance up at the top here. Oh, no mouse. And then you would begin a transaction. Now, transactions are really important. In Realm, they're required. But in most databases, you'll see things like transactions as a way to ensure that your data got saved to disk so that when you need it later, it is there 100%. So this will either work or fail. There's no variable. You get exactly what happened. So you can see that we have our user, and we actually have Realm create the user. Now, this is kind of weird. And so when I say that it has direct POJO mapping, I would say mostly. This is the only weird part about that is initially Realm has to create the object, and that's due to the way that it was implemented. But aside from that, you just have setters and get. You set your data, get the data back later, and the commit transaction finishes all that up, and you're good to go. And the only thing I left out here is that you actually need to call realm.close, but that's not a big deal. So query simple. When you want to go get the data, we have to define what kind of data we're going to be getting back. And this helps with Realm trying to do the direct object mapping. So user.class is the class that we created in the previous slide. And we know that I have somebody called Lindsay in here. So I want to find users that are equal to Lindsay, and I want to find the first one. So this is going to find any objects with the name Lindsay and give it back or nothing. So that makes it really easy for me to check. But you probably not simple. So this is more akin to what you would see in an actual SQL statement. So we have one that's we're looking for Caitlin as a user, and or we're looking for Z that lives in Brooklyn. So we can see with these begin group and end group that is actually doing an and match. Whereas if I had done equal to and just equal to without the grouping, it would have been an intersection match, which is important SQL terms. But without getting too much into that, you can see that you can create these complex options and string them all together and do whatever you need to do. And we can see that this time we actually did a find all. And this is where the lazy loading comes in. So what I have is a list of results, but those users actually haven't been instantiated from the disk, which is really important because that means that this runs really, really fast. You can do all of this on the UE thread with almost no performance loss, which is really, really incredible because typically you have to do all your own asynchronous work and it gets really complex and convoluted and you need like a whole system of notifications to try to move data back and forth between disk, and Realm kind of just solves that for you. So object linking. Obviously, like we were saying with the manufacturers and products and owners, you want to link objects together, and Realm has a really convenient way of doing that. So everybody knows what a list is, just a basic collection. You know that you get a get, you get an add, you have like add all, and like to array, things like that. So Realm provides that kind of those features for you. And so we can see here that is made up of users, which are members of the team. So we're creating the each object, because remember that Realm has to create these objects for you. And we're simply adding the user to the team. So that's pretty simple, right? So inside of our database now, without the other boilerplate code for beginning and ending the transaction, we've linked these objects together. So there's only one object for each. We can look for those objects individually, and they're linked together, which is great. So deletion. Deletion is actually really, really simple. Objects themselves know how to delete themselves. So simply calling user.remove from Realm, that user is gone. They've vanished into infinity, no longer available. And you can actually do this with, so if you wanted to, again, find all the users that are age 20 or younger, you could delete all of them at once. All the college students, delete all of them. So sorting, it also does sorting. The sorting is kind of basic, so unfortunately, you can't override compare to inside of the Pojo. So if you're used to doing normal collection sorting in Java, that's not available. All you get is basic sorting algorithms. But most of the time, that's enough. So in this case, we have, we're just going to assume that age is like an integer, and it'll just return the results in that order. All right, and chaining. So another really cool thing that it does is because the results that Realm returns is actually just kind of metadata, you can perform more queries on that, which is really powerful if you had a complex system where you can't predict initially all the things that you're going to need to do in the query, and you could figure that stuff out. So instead of requerying the whole database, you now have a subset of data. And this is kind of similar for doing like subtables inside of SQL. So the last really cool thing to me is that libraries can use this. And libraries can use this in a way that is safe for other applications to also use Realm and guarantee that there is no conflict between that application using your library and your library itself. So using a couple simple rules, up here we have Realm module, and we're defining that the module is a library, and all classes true is kind of like a quick hack that instead of defining what classes I want to be able to store in the database, I just say that give you goes in there. So probably not a good forward-thinking idea, but just a quick example here. And then just create your Realm configuration, which is just a way to define what Realm should look like when it does the get instance. And that's it. Then you use Realm like you normally do inside the application, and everything is now safeguarded for you, which is really, really cool. And so when you change data in a database, obviously you need to know that that happened. So most implementations of databases, it's up to you to know when it's important by other things like, hey, this happened, you need to do whatever you need to do now because there's new data or data's been removed or modified. Realm has a very lazy implementation of this, but that you get this on-change callback. So inside of your fragments, your activities, you can listen for and just like broadcast receivers, it just says, hey, something happened, do something about it, and your code can fire events. And that's all for free and cross-thread as well. So kind of like a bus, like an event bus. Questions?
All right, so let's say you have a Pojo, right?
Yep.
And let's say I have a getter that's like get display name, where it's first name, last name concatenates it. Is that possible in Realm?
No, that is not possible, which is an unfortunate side effect of the way that they're inflating classes. So when you define your class, they're actually using annotations to create like a dynamic class. and that's what it. So unfortunately, you can't override equals to. You can't override compare. Have custom getters and setters. The getters and setters need to map exactly to the name of the property.
That sucks.
It does, but you can work around that. That's like the one constraint that it has, but that goes back to everything's pros and cons, right? So
Yeah.
that's probably a pro for a lot of people, and it's arguably a con for a lot of other ones. So.
What's the similar question to it? Okay. Realm create objects, right?
Yep.
Create store. But you can provide a class.
Yes. So that's the class here on the left. So we have just a simple class. It's missing the getters and setters that you would need to have, but that's basically the data that's inside of it, right?
So there's no customization on that class.
No, outside of just the plain getters and setters, that's it.
So if Realm is creating the object, so the parent, it's not inherited. I mean, how can you access who's the parent of that class?
So there is one thing missing here. It should be extending a Realm object,
Okay.
and Realm object, it's a special implementation that is database aware. But really, all of your data models, so that you get this nice Pojo utility going on, they should just be very simple, and they should be very, I would say small. Like, you want them to be small and straight to the point. Don't get crazy with data, but it is a good thing. This kind of ties into what David was asking. When your data is limited to, you can only get and set to it, you're kind of the logic elsewhere, right? Which is a good thing. So you have is literally only data because that's all it can be, and then you have your logic elsewhere that's expecting that data. You can do static methods though, so that is an option. So if you did want to do the name concatenation, static method in there that says, get first and last name, pass the object to the static method, and then do.
Can you have a Realm list filled with a Java string objects?
No, because string would have to extend the Realm object. But if you had a class that was just like a string, like this user, like you can put the users in the Realm list. Is that Austin?
Yes.
Cool. Everybody say hi, Austin.
He's watching here. Hi, Austin.
Nobody, yeah.
Obnoxious. He wouldn't
Yeah, no, you can't put primitive types into as Realm objects, and you can't do there's no double inheritance or multiple inheritance in Java, so you can't have a string extend a Realm object. That's not possible. But a Realm object can obviously hold strings like the name and location. So, what's up?
What are common security when it relates to saving data? How does library resolve?
Okay. Yeah. When saving data, you do have concerns there. When you save data on a mobile device, you need to be aware of the context of where that data is saved. So you have internal storage, you have external storage, and the external storage might be on device, or it might be like a physical SD card. So most apps are going to store almost exclusively to internal storage, and so by default, the default configuration for Realm is to save in your application's internal storage, which is reasonably safe, but it's not impervious. So if you have allow backup true on your manifest, it's possible to just copy the data through ADB. Optionally, if the device is rooted, obviously another app could potentially access that data. So Realm does actually have encryption built in. So using AES, you can encrypt the data if that is something that is important to you, but I wouldn't recommend encrypting everything for. But I haven't tried it, so it's probably pretty performant, but you can have multiple Realm databases inside your app, obviously, as the library demo showed. So, anybody else? Comments, hate? Austin, does Austin have anything else?
I think Austin's done.
Cool. All right.
Keep distracting him.
Well, thank you guys.